How many people know who I am? I'm just curious. Thank you, my loyal fans. But, no, I actually don't have a website. I don't have business cards, and don't have Facebook, and I'm not proud of that. It's just the grace of God that I actually end up paying the bills, because also, if it wasn't for the last minute, nothing would ever get done. We went ahead and put this presentation together for you last minute, but I put a lot of thought into it before I put it down. So I hope you enjoy it. Is there anybody under here that's a carver that's under 25 in the room? Under 25 years old? No? Who's the youngest carver that we have?
Elmer raised his hand.
Thor! Look at that baby face. Yeah. Now, can you go ahead and just press play on the slideshow? I'm going to go ahead and show you a little bit of my work, and then as I do that, I'm going to show you something that hopefully you do if you ever have a presentation that you need to give, or you're going to stand up in front of people. These are called power poses. I'm going to give you 3 to choose from. If you're sitting down, then you're going to be relegated to the mobster gangster boss pose. I need a chair to show you. These are scientifically proven to do you better in a presentation. Since I'm going to be doing that, I'm going to invite you to join me. The Monster Gangster Boss Pose, you typically would want a desk, but if you have a chair that's near you, you can use this one. You're going to put your feet up on the desk. You're going to take up as much space as possible. Put your hands behind your head. And you're going to do that for about 2 minutes. The next one is called Wonder Woman. Looks like this. It's amazing. And then Rocky Balboa. But you want your feet spread a little bit further apart, both hands in the air. So everybody just pick one of those, go ahead and do it real quick. I know you did, yeah, there you go. All right. Is that going to work? Can you all hear me? Testing, testing.
Put it on your t-shirts.
Testing, testing. Okay, can you go ahead and press play on that slideshow? My name is Stephen Higgins. I am 31 years old. Usually people ask me because they say, how long have you been doing this? And I say, a long time. And I don't want to tell them because they say, you only look like you're 20 years old. That's a gift that my family was given, is that we look like little kids for a long time. And it was very hard to get taken seriously as a sculptor because people used to buy my carvings because I was a cute little kid. I got apprenticed out to a master sculptor when I was 11 years old. And the man's name was Conrad Sandoval. And whenever he showed up at the competitions back in the day, it was pretty much a race for second place. There was Conrad Sandoval, and then there was Alexander Safanov. He goes by Sasha, and those guys were the 2 big dogs on the porch. And so when I was a kid, Conrad would say, you know, learn to do it this way, and I would be trying to copy something, but I didn't want to learn how to do carvings and have people walk up and say, oh, that looks just like Conrad. But you can't help but let your art be influenced by the people that you hang out with. So I will just tell you, just pick and choose your friends wisely. Also, because I've noticed before when I've been hanging out with people, it's like bowling, I've heard. I don't do a ton of bowling, but they say, you know, when you hang out with people that are excellent bowlers, it's that synergy that you put yourself around that pushes you to make yourself better. And I can look around this room at people that I've spent time with over the years, and whether they know it or not, they're teaching me and I'm learning. And everybody has something different that they bring to the table. That's something that's so interesting from people's backgrounds, whether they have a welding experience or whether it's a marketing background or somebody that you know, worked at a car dealership or whatever. We take what we have in our background and we put a twist on it with wood carving. One of my disadvantages is that I've never had another job because I got started so young. And so if this thing doesn't work out, I didn't graduate high school, and I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. So my hope is that the computers and the machines won't get good enough to ever keep up with us, and we'll have a hard time figuring out how to make something look cool in a rotten old stump. Not that I carve rotten old stumps unless the customer really wants something in there, but we can make it work. One of the things that I like to do is take pieces that I saw Conrad do and try to make them better than he did, which is, they say that an apprentice can only get as good as his master, and I actually beat him in a competition one time. He retired from competing, and then he came back in this competition, and I whooped him good, and they had some televisions there. It was for, I think, episode 4 on Saw Dogs, and I was real proud, and they got to film the whole thing. But he's become one of my dear friends, and it's always very difficult in a mentor and apprenticeship relationship. If you've ever hung out with somebody that you're trying to learn from, there's lots of opportunity to have broken relationship if you guys are working together, and so forgiveness and grace is essential in any kind of business relationship, but to have something that has longevity to it is just really a blessing, whether that's going to be in friendships or in career, because there's a lot of things that you can learn from each other, and it takes a long time to grow an old friend. One of the things that was particularly hard for me is because I started at such a young age, is Conrad and Justine had adopted 9 children. They weren't able to have any children of their own. And so the old saying goes, 1 boy is a boy, 2 boys is half a boy, and 3 boys is no boy at all. And he already had 2 boys helping him that was a little bit older than me. And so I got invited along to help clean up the sawdust. And I just never stopped, and the other boys ended up getting in trouble, and that ended up being working out to be in the wood carving, and I just grabbed onto Conrad's coattails with 2 hands and didn't let go. And I had been carving with a pocket knife and chisels ever since I was a kid. I did some Boy Scouts, but when I saw somebody carving with a chainsaw, I thought, that's the coolest thing, I gotta try that. And my wife was friends with his wife, and so my mom was friends with his wife, and my mom talked his wife into it, and then his wife talked him into it, and I got to end up coming along. And I wish I was charging you guys for this seminar, not for my benefit, but for yours, because usually we don't value something that we don't pay for. And all of y'all, if I charged $100 for each of one of you sit here, like every one of you would have a notepad, and you would just be learning completely differently. Because for my apprenticeship, for the first 7 years, everything that I made belonged to Conrad. And I broke a lot of stuff, to be fair, and so some of that helped to pay for, learning how to back up a truck and trailer, or learning the right way that a spark plug is actually supposed to twist into a chainsaw, and when you're supposed to stop with your brute force as a young man. But every time that Conrad picked up a saw and he was using it, I was zoned in, because I knew that that was my education. And I didn't actually get to start using a saw until I was 14. But I had done so much sanding and learned the detail and learned to talk to customers that, actually carving with the saw, that's a huge part of wood carving, and that's what I try to do, is keep a saw in my hands. But before that, you can learn a lot when you're sanding a piece. Like usually when I have people that are working for me, you want to learn and get it stuck in their head what it's supposed to look like before they sit there and try to do it with the saw. So several years of that was helpful. And then when I turned, just let me know when it gets to the end of it, because I think it'll turn over and keep playing. I don't want to bore them.
No,
But
dude, I'm missing it as I'm
okay. So my first competition, I turned 15 years old, and it was a charity for an all-girls Catholic school. And boy, did I think I was a rock star. I had 17 girls standing around watching me, and I wish I knew how to do something else besides a little houses with trees next to them. That's all I knew how to do. So I did this big stump, and it had little trees and houses, because Conrad wouldn't give me any good wood to start with. I'd have to carve all the scraps that came off of his main blocks. And one of the benefits of that is learning not to have just a single cylinder block. You have to actually see what's in the wood and try to make it fit in there. Like Mountain Mike was saying, if you have a log that you can fit a 14-inch bear head into, like don't carve an 8-inch bear head. You want to try to use it up to the max and produce product that's eventually sellable. And like I said, I went through this awkward phase because people used to buy my carvings because I was a cute little kid, and then I stopped being cute, but I still wasn't good. And so it was nice that at least somebody was buying my meals for me, and that I was working for free. So I turned 18 years old, and I had a trade, and I had a truck, and I was ready to set out on my own. And still over the years, I stayed in contact with Conrad, and was able to work with him, and the relationship changed where I didn't give him the profits from everything that I made, which was nice because that's good to a certain extent, because my mind is so geared towards money that it would have been hard for me to grow and learn, because once I figure out a design and the ability to make money on a product, then I have a hard time venturing out and trying something new. And when you don't care whether it sells or not, sometimes that's helpful. Because fear, I feel like, holds me back a lot personally. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of investing time carving and making something that's, not going to sell, especially when I have designs that I've already worked on and perfected that I know I can get out there and sell. It almost doesn't feel fiscally responsible when you have a family to provide for, to massage your art ego by spending all this time on a piece when you could be doing something that's going to produce finances. And so I recommend a ratio of 10 to 1, where you do 10 pieces that are paying the bills and 1 that keeps your heart alive. I see guys that go straight into production, and you actually end up, I think, being less productive in the long haul. All of you guys, I would imagine, have gotten into a piece that you're really enjoying, you're really into, and you're not even paying attention to the clock, you're not feeling tired, and you end up producing something that's beautiful. And maybe it wasn't, 16 bear heads that you could have produced coming out of a log in the same amount of time, but it's important to keep your heart alive while you do this. There's probably a lot better ways to make money out there than chainsaw carving. It is a great way to do it, and I feel so blessed to have the ability to go out and grab a piece of wood and go out in the forest and just take your talent and a piece of wood. I've often thought that it'd be neat to start a reality TV show where you give guys $100 and they have to start from scratch and see who can get to 50 grand to make it across the country first, or something like it. It would just be fun to see, you're running into yards, and you know how interesting it is just being a part of the carving family. We live a life like no other, and somebody just needs to hold a camera, and I know that it'd be interesting, because I'm always interested hanging out with everybody, and the places we go and the people that we meet. I meet some strange birds. I meet the richest of the rich. I've had carvings in celebrities' homes and trailer parks, and it really is fun. So I'm going to go ahead and go through a little slideshow that's a little bit about myself. This is my wife and daughter right here. This is my sister. I've always been blessed to have a very supportive family. Go ahead and give them a round of applause. They put up with a lot in the chainsaw carving world. Taking your carving to the next level. I actually was carving there. Some of you will notice I'm not wearing eye protection. I don't recommend that. Also, wearing a respirator, that is a great idea. I've started to do it more, and I wish I could have done it younger. And if I could go back and talk to my younger self, I would say wear a respirator, especially if you're ever carving spalted wood. Spalted wood, even if you stopped smoking 7 years ago or whatever, it has a tendency to get fungus spores in your lungs, and they can grow there. And does everybody know what spalting is? It looks like, yes, it's a stage in the rotting process of the wood, and it looks like somebody took ink pen and kind of drew in the wood all these neat designs. It's absolutely beautiful, especially marine life. It kind of looks like the sunlight is coming in through the water and hitting the back of a humpback whale or something like that. And you want to talk real fancy like that to customers when you're trying to get them to open up their wallet. So, wear your protection. I have never cut myself with a chainsaw while it's running. This knuckle is one solid scar from sharpening, and you know that you're cutting yourself if you're sharpening right. Now I wear a glove most of the time. And chaps. I've come real close. One time, I cut through my shirt, I cut through my belt buckle, and I think the chaps fell down and I didn't cut myself. And the other time, I was wearing these, and I cut through, the first layer I cut through my jeans, I took hair off my leg, and it didn't cut into. So, and Conrad, the guy that taught me how to carve, he's been carving for 20-something years, and he ended up cutting himself a couple of years back. So it doesn't matter how much experience you have. Please wear your safety equipment. I'm never going to recommend carving barefoot. I know several people that have been cut. It's not. I mean, if that's your thing, that's wonderful. I love that there's that kind of culture and that there's that kind of individuating. But just as far as having a place on a platform, you might not see me always wearing eyeglasses. I'm going to recommend you do it. And I'm trying to get better at it myself. I'm trying to get better at wearing a respirator, specifically if you're sanding dry wood, cedar, spalted maple, redwood, any black walnut. You can actually develop an allergy buildup in your body where you're going to be allergic to cedar, even if you're not right now. People that work in mills over years, it builds up in your body. And so I want to keep you guys good for the long run. Like they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So please, wear your safety glasses, wear your chaps. The average chainsaw injury is $5,400 in an emergency room. The average pair of chaps is $50. Plus, it keeps your pants clean, and your wife likes it when you don't track sawdust into the house, even though I tell her it is money. But it's nice, it's nice to be able to take those chaps off and leave them at the shop. Taking your carving to the next level. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Carving design. A lot of times I don't have a plan when I show up at a show. I've done a lot of competing. I probably do 4 or 5 competitions a year, but back in about 2010, I was pretty good for how old I was, and I tried to live off of just prize money, which is a bad way to do it. I don't recommend that business model because it's kind of arrogant when you show up and expect to pay your bills just living off of prizes. But one of the ways that I would do this is I come up with a general idea or a theme, and I don't have it real set in my mind, and then you want to come up with lines that you can go ahead and follow. And I'll just show you on the chalkboard here. These are a couple of the real simple ones. This is probably my favorite, and I know this is elementary. Probably some of you know this, but it never hurts to think about it. When Bob King competes, the thing that he's going to be thinking about typically is telling a story. He wants to tell a story in his pieces and in his sculptures. And when you look at that, the point of art is to cause an emotional response to come out of a person. It's like communication without language. Music is how we decorate time, and art is how we decorate space. And when you're speaking the same language as somebody without words and it's connecting with them, then you're creating art. So whether that is just a happy bear that people, it makes them happy and there's something that they connect with in that, then that's key. But also if you're doing art that has a cause or has a greater purpose to it, then that is great to be able to show in your piece as well. The idea that I started with on this piece is called the breath of life, and in Genesis it talks about God creating, everybody says, what's that up there? Well, it's supposed to be a moon and all the planets, and then the creator comes in, and he's kind of a Native American style creator because it seems like all the faces I make look like Indians. At least they did back then anyway, because Conrad was an Indian fellow, and I spent most of my growing up looking at Indians and watching him carve Indians, and so I ended up carving Indians, and they took us to powwows and stuff, and a lot of the Native American stories of creation are fun. So this is the Creator God, and if you look in the beginning of Genesis, it says that He created all of the animals and the planets with the spoken word, except for with Adam, He breathed the breath of life and He breathed it in through his nostrils. There's some tribes and stuff that think that the wind that comes out of your nostrils is the purest wind that comes out of your body, and they'll actually make nose flutes for it and stuff. But so this is Him breathing the breath of life after He formed Adam, which is kind of neat because it talks about God being a sculptor. He takes Adam and He forms him out of the clay, and it looks just like Him, and then He breathes life right in through the nose. So that was kind of it hasn't quite got to the crowning achievement of creation. This is Him making Adam. I should have probably done Him making Eve, except for women's faces are hard to carve. It's easy to carve a man with high cheekbones, but to carve a good-looking woman, you got to be quite the talented sculptor. So all the animals are standing around watching Adam be created with the breath of life that's coming in through the nostrils. And so that was the idea that I had. And then I come up with design and lines, and obviously the log wasn't big enough either. because sometimes you show up at a show and your log's not quite the right size that you were hoping. So I sliced the log in half, and then I offset it, and I attached it back together so I could get it wider for that initial impression of the palette lines. And then if you're ever doing something for an auction, most of the people are only going to be seeing it from one angle. So if you see the back side of this piece, it's just lines. But most of the crowd that walked around at this show, they could only see the piece from this angle. And so that's where I'm going to put most of my detail and impression is right here. Obviously, you want to have something for a 360-degree piece in the judging. And please, if you guys ever are competitive sculpting, read through the judging criteria. Try to think like a judge when you're judging your piece. And that's something that's going to really be helpful. So this is the S-curve shape. It's kind of hard to get it that wide when you have a log, because mostly your log is probably going to be closer to this. Also, you have your C shapes, and then sometimes I like to start also with where the negative space is going to be, and then you're going to plan. Like you could do triangles or something like that, and what you want it to be balanced. So if you're going to have a pierce-through cut here, you want to do that, and then maybe since something's already at this angle where your negative cuts are going, then you'll take the line flowing down like so. This is pretty simplistic and simplified, but if you can play with Chris Foltz, when he does something, he's going to do one main piece that's like a heroic figure. He's not going to necessarily be trying to tell a story. He may have a title to it that is showing a thought process going somewhere. It's going to photograph really well, and it's going to have a lot of wow factor. What I try to do in my pieces is I try to make somebody's mind twist and move and be excited. Whether that's a small piece that is a bear, or whether it's a larger piece that's competition. I want to have a line that flows. And usually, if I can develop the one main line, and then I'll find characters, and I'll find pieces that fit with the theme that I'm thinking of, and put them in that main line that I designed first. So when you're putting together a sculpture, I would say pull out a spray paint can, figure out where your lines are. If you have knots and stuff, sometimes that's great to be able to work around it, and that actually enhances the design. A lot of times, if I didn't make mistakes, or if the wood was perfect, it wouldn't have turned out with as good of a piece in the end as I originally would have intended, and that's why I try not to design it too concretely in my mind before I go ahead and start, because of the unpredictability of it. If I was a painter and I had a blank white piece of canvas every time, I think I would have a really difficult time coming up with things that look unique and original. And the hardest part is when somebody walks up and they say, "I love that piece, can you do another one just like it?" Oh my goodness. Especially if it's like a competition piece I've been working on for 3 days, because that is a long time for me to stay on one piece. I typically like to do lots of pieces in a day, as opposed to spending multiple days working on one main piece. Which we'll talk about that a little bit later. Can you go to the next slide, please? Oh, contrast. This last one here. Also, when you're doing competition pieces, it's a good idea to have different contrasts when you're having, like this is where die grinders are coming in really handy. If you can create something like a lizard and just take that die grinder and do all over it, and that's going to create like the scales or a dragon, and that'll be completely different than the texture you can create with a chainsaw, and then have another place where it's smooth. Having that contrast in the different textures when you're looking at a piece, and then also with your burning and highlighting, and the guys that are getting off into painting, like that's something that I would really like to spend some time with people that are excellent painters. Sometimes I have people paint my pieces. I've gotten more into painting my pieces, but when you can develop that highlight and that contrast, not only with texture and showing the grain with smooth, but sometimes it's hard when your whole piece. Some guys are just in love with their sanders, and I appreciate that. I don't want to do it because it takes a lot of time to sand a piece, and if I can sell it with chainsaw only, then that's great. But a lot of times when you're judging, you can create a difference in contrast, and then also have the negative space, have the lines. It's going to really excite their mind when they look at it. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. I'll tell you, how I do it, and I've found success with it. But there's, many different ways, such as I mentioned with Bob King and Chris Foltz, where they've put their own style. It's a lot of their personality and the way that their mind works and thought process. And this is what I've found success with at judging. And it's not as easy to win as it used to be, because everybody just got all all better all of a sudden. I see these guys have been carving for 4 or 5 years, and it's really great. It's exciting. It's kind of scary because it took me 20 years to get there, and I'm like, how'd they get so good so fast? But and we go to the next slide. This is kind of a creepy sculpture. I don't usually carve bears that have braids. She's holding a Sears and Roebuck magazine, which the client wanted to go ahead and paint. She's an artist, and she's knocking on an outhouse door. So that's what's going on in the photo for the client. But I was looking through trying to find something that was animated, and when you can put that spark of life in a piece, you want. Typically, what I start off with when I carve is I start off with the head, and you can tell a lot of emotion. People have incredible facial recognition software in their brains, and if you ever carve a face on a piece, and you hold up your phone to photograph it, I mean they've even put that facial recognition software into the phones. You can see that little. I mean, I feel pretty proud when the phone picks up, where the face on your piece is and puts the little box around it. It's like, yeah, that's a face. But faces are so powerful in your pieces that when you start to carve with that, just the way that the head is tilted at an angle can tell a lot about the emotion that's going to be expressed in it. I have a couple of little guys right here that I carved. This is just some of my production stuff. I usually try not to carve this small, but I got this battery-powered saw that you can carve indoors, and it is really nice. Thank you, Husqvarna. I know Still's getting on the bandwagon. They might have actually even started it, but the Husqvarna 536 LIXP is better. I'll just say that. Everybody that has it loves it. It's quite the initial upfront investment, but it can have you carving little things like this to be able to pay for the saw, so you don't feel bad when you tell your wife how much you actually spent on it. And this little guy, he has a twist to his body. He has his butt sticking out on the side. So when you see him straight up front, he has a tilt to the angle of the head. And this guy's looking just straight on. He doesn't have a tilt to the angle of his head at all, and he's just facing forward. Now both of these sell. This one has quite a little bit more animation into him, and I'll pass those around. Because you guys have never seen a bear before, you can get a good look at them. Also take a look at the eyes. I'm going to talk about eyes at the last part. So I want to talk about how I do the eyes and possible recommendations for you guys as far as tools that you need to buy, because we always know that we're looking for more tools that we need to spend money on. Okay, twist the body, offset the jaw. I got this from a customer of mine. It was this... I was rounding the bottom of my jaw, and I was just putting it on straight. And he said, I like the one that I bought from you before because it looked like he was saying, welcome, like that. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. So I try to put the bottom of my jaw to a point, and then if you can offset it just slightly so everything's not perfectly in proportion, if you can raise an eyebrow just a little bit. And when I carve my head, you want to think of, I think it's called the dichotomy line, and I'll take the saw and either... If you got a lot of bar oil that's coming off, you can just rev it up and it'll put a line right down the center of the head, and that way you can get things in proportion and figure out, so, your cheekbone's not higher on this side, and a lot of it is in the block-out stage, because if you get the head right in the block-out stage, people think, it comes later. No, when you're first doing your first couple of cuts in the block-out, and if those are slightly off, you really want to pay attention to that, because that ends up showing in the end product where it doesn't look quite right. And with our facial recognition software being what it is, it looks like that person or that animal is something that you would not want contributing to the further genome chain because there's something wrong with them. So it's good to learn how to carve something where both sides are symmetrical and a bear's just standing there, and that's a great place to start. That's where a lot of us do start. But once you have that down, try raising the eyebrow a little bit, try go ahead and turning them in a different pose and tilting the head, and raising the arm, and that's where you get a lot of that animation that makes the piece look like it's alive. Go to the next slide, please. Accountability. This is a word that we love. That's why we work for ourselves. That's a joke. This is Aaron. He's been working for me for about 4 years, and he's currently over in Thailand for a year. He's going to be back this summer to help me, and then he's going back over to Thailand for 3 years, which is bittersweet because we were Bible school students together, and he's going off and pursuing his dream, which I love. I wouldn't ever want to keep somebody back from doing what they love, but he was such an encouragement, because our occupation can turn into a solitary existence if you don't have people that you can link arms with and run alongside with, and make sure that you're there at least by 10 o'clock in the morning, which is early for me. So, the gift of desire. If I could give each one of you an invaluable gift for chainsaw carving, it would be the gift of desire, because if you want it bad enough, even if you're not the most talented person, even if you don't have a great place to carve, nope. Okay. How's that? You got it? Okay, the gift of desire. If I could give you guys something, it would be the gift of desire. I want you to be waiting in bed for the sun to come up so you go outside and carve. Now, I started off that way, but when you become a professional, the definition of being a professional is not needing inspiration, okay? We get out there and do it because it's our job. And sometimes we enjoy it, but whether we enjoy it or not, we need to go out there and do it. And a lot of times, if you just say, I'm going to do this for 10 minutes, and if I still don't feel like doing it, then I'm going to stop. After you're already into it for 10 minutes, it's like getting on the treadmill. The hardest part is actually getting to the gym, then getting on the treadmill, which I highly recommend for chainsaw carvers, because we don't get any cardio at all. We just stand there and breathe two-stroke smoke. And if you can get out there, and my lower back, then everything I own is heavy. That's another great reason to have somebody else with you, because they can get on the other side of that toolbox and you don't have to figure out how to get it up into the flatbed truck when your lift gate is not working because you didn't put hydraulic oil in it. So, swimming is great. I've been trying to get out and go to the gym for 30 minutes just to get my heart rate up and then stretch before I go to work. I'm not into lifting weights. If I'm going to work that hard, I want to get a paycheck at the end of it. But I do recommend getting out on a treadmill, getting your heart rate up, whether it's an elliptical, and stretching. The Carver yoga, I'm disappointed more of you didn't take her up on that class. I didn't either. I probably had a better excuse than you did. I was watching my daughter so my wife could do it. But I recommend getting some kind of a stretching routine, just doing that on a basis. Like I said before, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So please get out there, stretch before you start carving. Over in the UK, there's this gal that I saw at the English Open. She had a hula hoop that she would use, and that just loosen up your back. And of course make you look like a rock star to all your buddies before you started the show. So go ahead and think about that. Having a schedule. I try to work 5 days a week, which I usually end up working 6, because the Lord said, 6 days you shall work, on the 7th take a rest. A lot of times we get the 7th, take a rest, take that day off, but some of us miss the memo about working for 6 days in a row. And so I think that 10 to 5 tends to work pretty good for me, because if you're actually out there carving, it doesn't take a lot of time to move a lot of wood and get something done. I think realistic carving on a continual basis, 4 hours a day with a saw is a good amount of time. And you should be able to be making decent money if you're actually carving with a saw. Like, the average waitress in America makes $1,800 a month, okay? If we go out and even if you're not the best carver, you can be out there producing product. Conservative for me is $100 an hour when I'm working. That's what I need to be making. If the stars align, I can make up to $300 an hour, and sometimes more. So I'm not saying that to brag intentionally. I might be doing that subconsciously. But what I am saying is that the most important thing is that consistency and that stability, because even if you're only making, on average, $500 a week, that's $100 a day, 5 days a week, that's $2,000 a month, and at least you don't have to be a waitress, and you're making 200 extra bucks. So yeah, I recommend being nice to waitresses and tipping them quite a bit, because they're the ones that bring you your food, and you eat out quite a lot if you're a professional chainsaw carver. And I also recommend just having that consistency, having that schedule, and having a daily quota or goal. That's really helpful for me. And I try to just get the saw in my hand, because there's so many things, especially at home, that can take up your time that aren't actually income-producing activities. And when you have another person that can take care of a lot of those activities, like cleaning up sawdust, somebody's got to do it. But I could be making $100 an hour carving, and somebody can sand. You can teach somebody to sand. And when they're going to show up and you're going to pay them $10 an hour to sand, if I could pay myself $10 an hour to be that motivated, it would be worth it to me because it would be $90 worth of profit because I'm making $100 an hour while I'm carving. So that $10 an hour is a great investment. Some of you say, I can't afford to pay somebody $10 an hour. I say you can't afford to not pay them $10 an hour. And a lot of people would come and work for free just because they think we're so amazing. Which brings me, I'm going to save that for later. Art with a mission. This is my daughter Hadassah. Isn't she cute?
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
She's a natural.
Yeah. We don't know where she gets it from. The why behind what you do. You got to make meaning. And there's this book out there called The Art of the Start by Guy Kiyosaki. And one of the things that he says is the most important thing that you can do is have a why behind the what. And what I mean by make meaning is it's more than just paying bills. It's great to love what you do. Sometimes that's not going to carry you through. One of the things that we've started to do in our business is help fund adoptions. We take a percentage of the carvings, and we're going to help fund kids that need to get adopted in the U.S. There's 500 kids that are in the foster care system, and 500,000 kids that are in the adoption system, and 100,000 of them are for adoption. And to be able to find good families, it costs an average of $40,000 to adopt a child, which is really sad because it only costs $500 to have an abortion. And for families that want to adopt and that aren't able to adopt, purely because of finances, I think that that's a real tragedy. And one of the things that I'm going to do as a carver that's also going to help me work harder and have more personal satisfaction, help build a legacy in my life, is knowing that at the end of the year, maybe I helped one child get adopted. Maybe after 20 years, I've helped 20 kids get adopted. And if all I do is pay my bills, get to do what I love, have people incessantly compliment me and idolize me, and then also be able to help kids get placed in families, then I think when I'm at the end of my life, that'll be a lot of satisfaction. Somebody once said, don't spend your whole life living for something that you wouldn't die for. And I have to believe that I wouldn't die for chainsaw carving, but I've spent a lot of my life living for it. But when you look at kids and the future of America and this country, that's one of the best investments that you can make. They say if you want a crop in a year, go ahead and plant corn. If you want a crop that'll last a lifetime, go ahead and invest in people. And I think that loving God and loving people is one of the best investments that we can make. So, it gives you an opportunity to connect with the customer beyond just your carving. If you have a specific child portrait that you're trying to adopt, and you have that posted in your carving area, and you can explain to the people, we're going ahead and using a portion of these proceeds to help fund this adoption, then being in that constant contact with your customer of saying, hey, we helped this child get adopted, thank you for supporting us, that's going to give you another opportunity to get back in touch with the customer, send them a quick email. It's going to give them something more to talk about when people talk about it, but they're going to refer their friends, and they're going to tend to talk you down less on your price. So it's actually not going to cost you anything because who's going to want to sit there and talk somebody down on a piece when a portion of it's going to help fund to go and help fund kids getting into families. Planting a tree for shade. This is more metaphorical. It comes from an African proverb. It says, a man that plants a tree for shade that he will not enjoy in his lifetime has at least in part learned the meaning of life. And what we want to do is look beyond the scope of our day-to-day grind and plant something for future generations that we may not enjoy the fruit of in our lifetime. We may get some benefits, but being able to see an 18-year-old young man that got placed in a family and was going to have a totally different life in the foster care system because you carved an extra bear is going to give you a lot more satisfaction at the end of your life than other things may have. Anyway, we can go to the next slide. Orphan Justice Center. So, Rescue, Adopt, Restore. This is the organization that we're currently partnering with. What they do is they rescue kids out of human trafficking, and other difficult situations. I'm just going to go ahead and pass out some brochures. Would you mind sticking those? And it's a threefold ministry where they rescue kids, they help get them adopted, and they help with the restoration. Now, Artists for the Orphan is part of the restorative process. I don't know how many of you guys have felt like it's therapeutic doing art. I know for me, if I'm having a bad day or I'm having a hard time in my life, I just get out there, I start working with my hands, out in nature. There's something that happens with me that puts me in the right mindset. I came from a town with 300 people, and most of the kids that I grew up with ended up on drugs and just not in a great situation. I'm not sure exactly where I would have ended up without chainsaw carving. I'm so thankful for chainsaw carving and art in my life, and I want to give that opportunity to other kids. One of the things that is hard to do is get carvers to volunteer money to go outside of themselves to a charity. But what I have found is that carvers will volunteer carvings. And what we're working on that's going to be together in the next 30 days is an art bay, where you guys can sell your artwork, and a portion of the proceeds will go to help restoring orphans that have gotten adopted into families through the arts. And if you're interested in that, Catherine, can you pass around that clipboard? I'll just take down your name and email, and I won't send you friend invites to my birthday party, but I will just go ahead and connect with you briefly about the Artists for the Orphan. If it's something that you're interested in, it's not a total donation, and it's a further way to sell your art, and then it also goes to a great cause as well. Can you go to the next slide, please? So, sales. Right there, that white little box, I don't know if you guys can see it real big, but that is a screenshot from eBay. And this is what people search for when they're trying to come up with prices. It says under $170, $170 to $300, and over $300. They've done studies of a mental, physical, actual pain that takes place for the average consumer if they spend over $300. So what I try to do is I try to take that pain away, or at least sweeten the deal. What I try to do is most of my pieces down here are small pieces. I carve over 1,000 pieces a year, and they're not all $1,000 pieces. You know, a lot of them are. I have stuff that starts at $29, and I have maybe 60 seconds to 3 minutes in the actual carving part of it. And there's a lot of people that have that $20 bill in their pocket or $40 bill in their pocket, and it hasn't taken actual physical pain when they like it, and you don't have to help them carry it to their car. So these are the things that I'm thinking about when I'm creating artwork. I'm thinking about the theme. Where am I in the country? If I'm in the Midwest, I don't know why everybody likes corns and John Deere tractors, but that's what I'm carving. I'm not doing that on the coast. You know, I'm going to be doing sails boats. I'm going to be doing lighthouses. I'm going to be answering the questions in their mind before they even thought of it. Like Steve Jobs was so successful because he gave people a product that they didn't even know that they wanted until they had it in their hands. You have to think like the customer. First of all, they're going to walk up and they're going to say, do I like this piece? And then the next question that they're going to think of is, how would I get it home? Or it may be, can I afford it? So you want to figure out, a sale is like a chain. And if any one of the links in the chain gets broken, then it's going to abort the sale. And so what you want to do is you want to think about, who's going to buy this? Why would they buy it? Where would they put it? Can they afford it? And there's people that are walking around at a show that can buy a $3,000 sculpture. Okay, so you want to have the $3,000 sculpture that they want to buy. But that may only be one person out of 1,000 that walks through the crowd. Now, 50% of the people, may be able to afford under $300 sculpture, and so you're going to have a lot more success in that under $300 sculpture range. So you want to complete the chain, you want to answer their questions in their mind, and something that I've recently started doing is putting price tags on stuff, and that's helped too. So I recommend that. You can go to the next slide, please. The eyes. Now, predator versus prey. One of the things in eagles is they're a predator, and so what they're going to go ahead and do, since they're meat eaters, is they look straight down their snout so that they can focus right out in front of them. And I see a lot of people put eyes where they don't start on the front when they go ahead and they put their eyes in. You know, bears are predators. Some people think we're supposed to be vegetarians, but I say the eyes are looking straight forward, and I like to eat meat. You know, cows, rabbits, they're more of a prey, and so their eyes actually protrude kind of out from their skull, and they're going to be able to get a lot more peripheral vision when they're looking behind them. So that's something that you want to think about. That's part of capturing the essence of the species. Whenever you're creating an animal, you want to think about, you know, is this a predator or is this a prey? And usually when I start on my eagles, I go ahead and I burn. You want to look at it straight from the front, and then you want to see if it could focus right out in front of you. And then I burn straight in with my eye tool, and then I round out to the side. And I see a lot of guys that they'll start it and they'll burn right in on the side with their eye tool, and that kind of makes it look more like a prey bird instead of a predator. And so that's one helpful hint that somebody told me, and that I'm sharing with y'all. For doing eyes, let me give you a couple of tools that you have to buy. So tell your spouse, Steven told you got to go get it. This is an invaluable tool. How many of these are owned in the room? Quite a few guys. Anybody who does not have one, go ahead and turn around and look at everybody who has their hands raised. Okay, now go buy one. This is, it doesn't have to be Makita, and I'm not sponsored by Makita, but I love Makita. Man, they make some good quality stuff. This is an adjustable speed. I call it a finger sander. I'm not sure what the actual name for it is. It might be a mini belt sander.
It's a band file.
Band file?
Band
Okay. You can buy it for, I want to say, $220 to $300, somewhere right in there. There's a little more spendy than what you're going to get Harbor Freight, but they last for a really long time, especially if you're nice to the cords. I'm not, and they still last quite a bit, and you can replace the cord if you need to. But this part right here, if you can unscrew it, and if it's going to be transported on an airplane or go in your box, this little attachment right here on the end costs like $50 to $70, so you don't want to break that. And then you can buy the belts. I go ahead and get this on Amazon, and the belts come in 10 packs, 80 grit. Please go ahead and do yourself a favor, buy one of this. This is invaluable when you're trying to create wrinkles in the eyes, when you're trying to sculpt the top of the eyelid, when you're trying to do the bottom of the beak on the eagle. I mean, it's just absolutely invaluable. You can flip this up, move it at all different angles. Makita, if you ever do get wind of this, I'd like a couple more of these for free. A Dremel. Everybody owns a Dremel, right? Let me see the hands. How many people own a Dremel? Good. Okay, this is, I've tried out a lot of Dremels. This is the 4000, Dremel 4000. It's actually a pretty stinking good little Dremel. It's about $100. I tried getting ones for $5 at garage sales just because I'm that cheap. But I figure out if you're going to use something every day for the rest of your life, not that this is going to last for the rest of my life, but if you're going to use something every day, just go ahead and get a quality tool in your hands. Because I bought the $40 die grinders from Harbor Freight, and they work. But they don't have the high speed that you need to go ahead and burn the eyes in. They don't have the upgraded bearings, and it really is worth spending a couple of $100. I actually own 3 of these die grinders just because I don't like switching out bits. It's much quicker, you know, if you're doing multiple sculptures, to go ahead and have the right size eyeball bit that you can just go ahead and put in the piece. And die grinders are going to be used more and more as the way of the future in chainsaw carving. The full potential of this tool has not been fully realized. I highly recommend going ahead and getting a hold of one of these. I'll pass this around. This is an eyeball bit that I've had for about 20 years. Now the original design of this eyeball bit was developed by a man named Don Culp. Who knows Don Culp? Okay, he's one of the grandfathers of chainsaw carving that started it. He was originally from Canada, and he toured around the country recommending pull-on chainsaws. But despite that, he was quite the sculptor and quite the innovator. Now this bit that is going to be hopefully passed around is based on an original design that Don Culp came up with, and Conrad actually made it for me. And if you're going to go ahead and get a bit like this, which I know that there's a lot of eyeball tools out there. Some of them are made from bolts or from like a stone bit, but most of them, the design is completely round. This one has cutaways in the side of it, and you actually need the high speed and the force of a good quality die grinder behind you, because you don't want it to cut. You actually want it to burn, and the friction, even if you have a wet piece of wood, I mean, hopefully not too wet, but you can get a nice dark black eye in there. And then you take this sharp pointy little bit, and you can go ahead and you can pierce in at the sides, both the sides of the eye. That's going to give a lot more depth when you're looking at your piece, to go ahead and, you see some people and they'll carve faces, and it looks good, but it just kind of looks kind of flat. And you take that and you pierce that in, just do the tear duct on this side, and then part over here, you're going to add a lot more depth. It's amazing how much depth that adds. You can buy this little bit for your Dremel for like $5 at Lowe's, Home Depot. It's actually one of the most popular bits, and it comes in a 2-pack, because mine always ends up falling into sawdust and I can't find them. I'm so thankful they put another one in there. So how are you going to get a hold of this amazing eyeball tool that will last you for 20 years? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. Now, one time, it's a high-speed steel router bit. They mostly make them out of carbide these days, but back in the old days, they made high-speed steel router bits. And luckily, our good friends at Harbor Freight now have a package of router bits. It costs $6 or $7 for this package, and it's high-speed steel. And you can pick it up right at Harbor Freight. I go in there and I get all of them that I can, because I'm working with a machine shop to develop a set of eyeball tools that has a good radius. And what you don't want is just a straight dish, because a straight dish will create that plunge cut eye where you'll end up with a perfectly round circle. Now, there's a lot of animals that do have a perfectly round circle on their eyes, but what I like to do is create it with a little bit of a flatter dish that looks a bit more like, instead of this is mostly what you're going to see, which is fine if you're going to plunge. So this is going to be the bit here. That would go into your die grinder, your Makita die grinder. So you can plunge it straight in, and you're going to end up with a nice eye for your animal. What I'm trying to do, and what we're developing, is something that goes a little bit more like this. And I'm showing you how to do this so that if you do want to order one of these from me, then I'll go ahead and get it made up for you. But if you're ambitious and motivated and you want to go to Harbor Freight and fiddle with it yourself for $7, then you go ahead and go home and try to make one of these yourself while wearing eye protection.
Yes.
So your bit should look something a little bit more like this. But what you do is you take the bottom of that die grinder while you're using it, and you rock it back and forth like this. And you actually want to be pushing on this outside edge. And what you're going to do is you're going to create an eye that looks a lot more oval, and that'll give you space to go ahead and put your eyebrow right above it there, as opposed to a fully round eye, which kind of looks, a lot more awake. And especially if I'm carving animals, bears that look like they just had a few too many and they're got the grin and the eyelids are dropped a little bit, or if you're doing, owls or something, sometimes it's fun to make them look sleepy and whatnot. So this is something that I'm working on. That eyeball bit can do all sorts of different size eyes. It actually does take quite a bit of skill to use and learn, and I'm going to try to go ahead and have some demonstrations available. I'm set up right over by the Subway, right across from Subway where the auction's going to be. I have an enclosed trailer there. I'll have some pieces of wood and these tools available if some of you would like to stop by and try them out. I'll also take your name and number if you're interested in ordering some eyeball bits, and I can show you the packages of what they look like when we're going ahead and putting them together, and what the pack that you need to buy looks like. So you can go to the next slide.
How much, Steve?
How much?
How much you sold for?
Well, I got to get your information before I let you know that, don't I? Things we should all be thinking about. Who knows what a Roth IRA is? Raise your hand. Okay. Roth IRAs are for people who don't like to pay taxes, which is wood carvers, right? The average contribution maximum that you can make in a Roth IRA is, I think, it's either $5,000 or $5,500. It might be $55,000. Does anybody know this?
If you're over
55 is 6,500 a year.
Okay.
Under, it's 50, I believe 5,500.
Okay, 5,500 a year for the people that are not quite, and then they give you a little bit of help to catch up if you're over 65. Now the minimum contribution that you can make in a Roth IRA is $600, and the most important thing is to just start. Okay, that's $50 a month, and what it does is it grows tax-free. So if I put $10,000 in a Roth IRA and I didn't add anything to it, when I'm 62 years old, it's going to be worth $300,000. I don't have to pay any taxes on it. But when you go ahead and you add to it, it gets to be quite a bit more. This is $1 million conversation that we're having right here, and you don't have to be super wealthy to do it. I'm talking about $50 a month minimum to get you in there. That's pizza money. That's an overcharge on your cell phone. Please go ahead, talk to an accountant, sit down on Google. If you're going to take anything away from this, Roth IRA. Say it. Roth IRA. Okay. What are you going to do when you leave here? You're going to go start a Roth IRA. Me too. I haven't started one yet. This is the maddening part. It's because when I was 19 years old, somebody had a conversation like this with me, and I went down to the bank and I talked to him, and she said, "Oh, I wish I could get my hands on every 19-year-old, And she said, if you start now, you can retire by the time you're 55, and you'll have $3.5 million. And all of a sudden, 55 doesn't look so terribly far away. And I'm thinking, hey, 19-year-old kid, back in time, you there. So next year, we're all going to have Roth IRAs that's going to have at least $600 in it. Hopefully, something like $5,500 and maybe even $6,500 for some of us that need to get our butts in gear. But the cool thing is, you pay taxes on it now, but you don't pay taxes on it later. Which, as we get wealthier and more prestigious and are in a higher tax bracket later on in our lives, we won't have to have that conversation with Uncle Sam. Which, he doesn't give us a lot of breaks, but this is one of the few benefits that he says, hey, I'm going to hook you guys up. Please take the hookup. Okay, Carver family medical expenses. Who knows a Carver that has been hurt in this room? Not in this room that's been hurt, but just know of a Carver that's been hurt. Okay, sometimes Carvers get hurt, and a lot of us don't have medical expenses. Don't have medical insurance. And something that is so neat about this, international family of affection, is that we can come alongside each other. So if you do find out of a Carver that's been hurt, or if you've been hurt yourself and are brave and not afraid of posting and letting people know about it, I would just encourage you guys, write out a $100 check. If you're at a show, let somebody at the show know, and we can throw a couple of carvings in to help fund that person. Not only as the moral support of knowing, hey, you're not alone in this business, and we care about you, and it's not like you have to be a great carver to be welcomed in as part of the family. But that's one of the neatest things about this business, is that we can have that camaraderie, and that's something that I'd like to see happen more. I know that it's happened before, but I just wanted to leave you with that note, because we can really direct how this thing develops. We can direct the family that we want to be, and I think it starts not in the best times, it starts in the hard times. So hopefully I won't hurt myself, but if I do, there's more than one reason that I had you all put down your email addresses. You're going to be here for me. I think that is the last slide. I know you all are burning with questions. Thirsty little minds running to the fountain of knowledge. Go ahead and hit me up. Any questions? Michelle. Thank you. You know what? When I first met my wife, she said she wanted 10 kids. And they said, let her have one and see if the number changes. And our goal was to adopt a child for every child that we had naturally. We haven't gotten to the place where we're ready to adopt just yet, but that's not keeping us from working to help other people see that. And then in the Orphan Justice Center, something that they're having trouble with is everybody that's involved is adopted kids, and so they're so busy that they need people that, even if you can't adopt, and adoption is in your heart, and you're not at a place where you're able to make that step, you can still help people that is their dream. And so at this stage in our life, we haven't been able to take that step yet, that is something that we've both talked about and are both on the same page about. She actually told me that it was a prerequisite for me marrying her, and so I agreed to that. And we in the future would like to introduce you to a child that we've been able to take into adoption, as well as hopefully more of our own natural kids as well.
Look at Sam Dunning.
Yeah, Sam Denning. He's what a great guy. He actually used his chainsaw carving proceeds because he has a job at a chemical plant, and then used his carving proceeds to help fund his adoptions as well. So that's something that I've always admired for him. He's a hard-working man, but he finishes so he can spend time with his family, and he plans his carving career around spending time with his family, and that's one of his greater causes that he's able to work for. And you see guys like that have that internal drive inside of them, and I think a lot of times, if you don't naturally have that internal drive, and you can put a cause that's greater than just paying my bills inside of you, you'll find that you actually make a lot more money, and feel better about doing it. What was that?
Yeah, well, being a sort of geometry person,
Yes.
I don't understand this at all, because isn't it just the rock back and forth motion that's making the oval eye? Because when you go in a circle, which a Dremel does, this would make a circle too.
Yes. Okay. So if you take this and you try to rock back and forth as you plunge in, what it's going to do is it's going to create, a ball shape. So as you rock in, it's going to pierce down to here, and you're going to have an animal or a human that looks like they have hypothyroidism, sort of kind of sticking out. So when you have this shape and you rock back and forth, right, this is going to come over and it's going to round that off. It's going to get into that triangle, and you're going to end up with an eye that looks
pushing on the other.
exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes. When am I going to do it? Whenever somebody stops by and bugs me. I don't have a schedule or a watch, but I will be over there carving because I haven't started on my piece just yet, and I know I need to start and do something, that
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock. 2 o'clock today we'll be doing eye tool demonstrations. Y'all can line up, I'll show you the tools, and hopefully send you away with something that, can move your... I'm right across from Subway, over by where they're going to have the auction at.
What's your most used saw?
My most used saw, I will say,
4 or 5 foot piece.
for a 4 or 5 foot piece. People pay for the detail that you get in the piece, and so I try to get a detail saw in my hands as fast as possible. People brag about, how long their bar is, at least outside of the carving world. You got an 18 or a 21-inch bar on that. I love the little 8-inch dime tip bar with 5/0 gauge, quarter pitch steel chain. You want to get the Steel brand quarter pitch chain. You don't want to get the Oregon, because the tie straps in the steel carving chain, and it specifically carving chain, they go ahead and they cut off the back of the cutters, which helps it around the radius of the tooth. You run it just a little bit loose, and they'll last for quite a long time. But I recommend the steel carving chain, an 8-inch dime tip bar. A lot of guys try the 12-inch dime tip bars, and that's what I first started out with. But if I had, a stick that was 4 feet long, say, and I was trying to write with it, and it's going to be a lot further out there, and then you get a stick that's 8 inches long, you're going to have a lot more control. And it's hard to make the switch, especially if you've been carving with the 12-inch dime tip bar. I recommend an 8-inch dime tip bar. Also, you use a lot less carving chain because your loops are smaller, and that's going to save you money in the long run. I will say, probably, I'm going to use a MS460 or a 440 steel, the old ones that say Magnum on them. Those are great saws. And then I'm going to go to a 445 XP Husky. No, not a 445. That's the... Yeah, that's not the one. But it is cheap. Yeah, that's the consumer grade saw. It's a great saw, but it's not. It doesn't have the magnesium crankcase. So I can't think of the exact name brand of it, but it's an XP saw that they made, and it's smaller than the 445. It only weighs like 9 pounds. When you stop by for the eyeball demonstration, I'll show you this off. And then it comes with a 10-inch bar that's a speed cut with 325 chain on it, by, they just, I don't know if they're available on the market yet. They sent it to us at a show for us to test it out, and I really love it. It kind of has a little bit of the narrow curve. And I'll just use those with the roller nose sprockets. But then the most used saw that I'm going to use is going to be with an 8-inch dime tip bar. I like the MS 150s. A lot of people love them. Some people hate them. You want to get that spark arrestor off of there and help it breathe. But it's the lightest. You didn't hear me say that. The lightest. These are not the droids you're looking for. The lightest saw that you can get in your hands is going to mean that you're going to be able to work longer. And I think it weighs like 6 pounds for the MS 150. And it's an expensive saw. It's like $600 or something like that. And there are a few here for sale. See Zoe in the back. There's a few here for sale. I also like the 201. If you can find an old MS 200 rear handle saw, that is probably one of the best carving saws that's ever been manufactured. And that is rip snorting machine if you're into making some serious sawdust fly. I also like the 201 and that new battery-powered 536 LIXP Husqvarna with a little dime tip bar on it. You want to get the 2 batteries. A battery is $160, which I thought, man, that's a lot of money to spend on a battery, so I only got 1 battery to see how I liked it. And that's kind of annoying to sit there and have to wait for it to charge. But it has about the same charging time and run cycle time, so you can switch out the batteries and have continuous carving operation. It's quite a bit different. You're also welcome to try out my battery saw to see if you want to make that kind of an investment if you stop by my booth.
What'd you say you had a bar on that for? What? The
You know,
bar on that battery saw?
Yeah. The bar that I currently have on it is a 12-inch dime tip, but that's only because I'm not sure why. I would prefer it had an 8-inch dime tip on it. But I just have lots of bars sitting around. I try to put something together that'll work before, I start carving.
That eye tool,
Yeah.
all right, being like the router bit, do you really have to have a firm grip on that there, or because it's straight across?
Sure. Yeah, I
So
don't.
will it grab and treat you wrong if you don't?
Yeah, but you better grab it first.
Yeah,
I've had it. You don't want to be wearing loose clothing, get it wrapped up in there. One of the things that I also do when you're going to make those eyeball tools is you want to make it dull on the cutter sides. Like a router bit, they want that real sharp so they can go right through the cut. I go ahead and dull those off so that when you swing over to the side, it's not going to grab and run across the face of your carving, because you don't want it to actually cut, you want it to burn. And so you're going to push it in there and you're going to swing it to the side, and it's going to be that dull burning process. That the reason that it can remove wood and go to the side is because it has those cutouts, not necessarily, and it has the pressure and the force of the die grinder behind it, not necessarily that it's cutting. So go ahead and experiment with it. There's lots of ways to round it off. Please wear gloves and eyeglasses and be safe. I don't want to get emails. Yeah. Anything else? No? Come by and see me. I appreciate you going.